Every single summer, millions of people eat a peach, crack open a plum, finish a bowl of cherries, bite into an apricot, or crack open an almond, and then they throw the pit straight into the bin. What they are throwing away is a complete, living, genetically programmed fruit tree, fully intact, ready to grow, costing absolutely nothing. And in just 3 steps that anyone can follow, that pit you were about to throw in the trash can become a tree that produces hundreds of pounds of fruit for the next 20, 30, even 40 years. If you've been doing this, throwing away your pits, this video is going to change that habit permanently starting today. If you want real practical advice on growing peaches, plums, cherries, apricots, and almonds from scratch, tips that come from years of actual experience with real trees in real soil, not from recycled internet articles, then subscribe to this channel right now and turn on your notifications. Every week, I put out content that helps home growers and small orchard owners get more fruit, solve real problems, and make the most of every tree on their property. Hit subscribe and join thousands of growers who are already getting results. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact 3-step process that turns any stone fruit pit into a growing tree, covering peaches, plums, cherries, apricots, and almonds specifically, because each one has slightly different requirements that most guides completely ignore. By the end of this video, you'll know how to prepare your pits correctly, how to trigger germination reliably, and how to get your seedlings established so they actually survive and grow into productive trees. This works whether you have a large garden, a small backyard, or even just a balcony with a few containers. Let's get into it. Here is the reality that most people never discover, and it's something that genuinely changed how I think about fruit trees. Every stone fruit you eat, every peach, every plum, every cherry, every apricot, every almond, contains inside its pit a fully formed embryo, a tiny, dormant, living plant. That embryo has everything it needs encoded in its genetics to become a full-sized fruit tree. The pit is not waste. It is the beginning of something that could outlive you and feed your children and grandchildren, but most people throw it away because nobody ever told them it was valuable. And the ones who do try to grow from pits, who drop a pit in a pot of soil and wait, almost always fail. And they fail for one specific reason that has nothing to do with their soil or their climate or their skill as a grower. They fail because they skipped the most important biological requirement that stone fruit seeds have, and without it, the seed will never germinate, no matter how long you wait or how perfect your conditions are. That requirement is called stratification, and understanding it is the entire foundation of successfully growing any stone fruit from seed. Here is what's happening inside that pit and why this matters so much. Stone fruit trees, peaches, plums, cherries, apricots, almonds, all evolved in climates with cold winters. The seed inside the pit is programmed at a biological level to not germinate until it has experienced a period of cold and moisture that mimics a natural winter. This is a survival mechanism. If the seed germinated immediately after the fruit fell from the tree in summer, the seedling would emerge into hot, dry conditions and die before winter even arrived. So instead, the seed waits. It detects cold and moisture over an extended period, and only when those conditions have been met for long enough does it allow germination to begin. This cold, moist period is stratification. In nature, it happens automatically. The pit falls to the ground in autumn, sits through winter in cold, moist soil, and germinates in spring when temperatures warm. When you grow at home, you have to recreate that winter artificially. And when you do it correctly, the germination rates you get from stone fruit pits are genuinely surprising. I've hit germination rates above 70% on peach pits using this exact method. Most people who try without stratification get 0. The other thing that stops most home growers from succeeding with pit propagation is the hard outer shell, the endocarp, that surrounds the actual seed inside. If you've ever looked at a peach pit closely, you know it's not a soft seed like a tomato or a bean. It's a hard, woody, ridged shell that protects the actual seed inside. That shell is designed to be tough. It protects the seed through the physical process of falling from a tree, sitting on the ground through winter, being stepped on by animals, exposed to freeze-thaw cycles. And while that toughness is great for the seed's survival in nature, it presents a challenge when you're trying to germinate it at home. The shell can take many months to crack open naturally, and in that time, the seed inside can rot if conditions aren't right. Experienced growers know how to work around this, either by carefully cracking the outer shell to access the seed directly, or by using scarification techniques that speed up the process without damaging what's inside. This is the knowledge that separates growers who consistently succeed at pit propagation from those who try once, get nothing, and give up. So here is the three-step process, applied specifically across peaches, plums, cherries, apricots, and almonds. Because while the core method is the same, there are important differences in timing and technique between varieties that will determine whether you succeed or struggle. Step 1 is pit preparation, and this is where almost everyone who fails makes their critical mistake. When you finish eating your fruit, your peach, your plum, your cherry, your apricot, don't just throw the pit in a pot of soil. Take it inside and clean it properly first. Rinse the pit thoroughly under running water and use a stiff brush to remove every trace of fruit flesh from the outside of the shell. This is not just about cleanliness. Fruit flesh left on the pit will rot during stratification, and that rot will create fungal and bacterial conditions that will kill the seed inside before it ever has a chance to germinate. Once the pit is clean, set it on a paper towel in a warm spot and let it dry for 2 to 3 days. Not in the sun, just at room temperature out of direct light. This drying period allows the outer surface to stabilize before you move into the next phase. Now for peaches and apricots specifically, I recommend carefully cracking the outer woody shell with a pair of nutcrackers or by wrapping the pit in a cloth and tapping it with a hammer, gently, with control. You want to crack the shell enough to access the seed inside without crushing or splitting the seed itself. The seed inside looks like a small almond. Pale, smooth, teardrop-shaped. That seed, extracted carefully from the cracked shell, will stratify and germinate significantly faster than the whole pit. For plums and cherries, the shell is thinner and you can stratify the whole pit without cracking, though lightly sanding one end of the cherry pit with fine sandpaper will speed things up. For almonds, the seed is already the commercially familiar shape, and the hard shell is typically removed for you. But if you're working with fresh almonds from a tree, crack and extract the kernel the same way you would a peach. Step 2 is stratification, and getting this right is what separates the growers who fill their gardens with trees from the ones who end up with nothing. Take your cleaned, prepared pits or extracted seeds and place them in a small container or Ziploc bag with a handful of moist medium. The medium I use is a mix of 50% coarse sand and 50% coconut coir, slightly damp, not wet, not dripping, just damp enough that when you squeeze a handful, it holds its shape but releases no water. Bury the pits in this medium, seal the bag or container loosely so there's some air exchange, and place it in your refrigerator. The temperature should be between 1 and 5 degrees Celsius. A standard household refrigerator is ideal. Now, here is where the timing differences between species matter enormously. Peaches need the longest stratification period, between 90 and 120 days. Yes, that's 3 to 4 months in the refrigerator. This is why I tell growers to start their peach pits in autumn, so they're ready to plant in late winter or early spring. Plums need 60 to 90 days. Apricots are similar to peaches, 80 to 100 days. Cherries need 60 to 90 days depending on the variety. Almonds need the shortest period. 40 to 60 days is usually sufficient. Mark your calendar when you put the pits in. Check them every 2 weeks to make sure the medium hasn't dried out completely. If it has, add a tiny amount of water, just enough to restore the slight dampness. And watch for the first signs of germination, a small white root tip emerging from the seed. Once you see that root tip, even if the full stratification period isn't complete, that pit is ready to plant. The root tip is your signal, not the calendar. Step 3 is planting and establishment, and this is where patience and the right conditions will determine whether your seedling becomes a tree or becomes a statistic. When your pit shows a root tip or when the stratification period is complete, prepare your planting container or your outdoor bed. For container planting, which I recommend for the first season regardless of your climate, use a pot that is at least 20 centimeters deep and has good drainage holes. Fill it with a mix of quality potting soil and 20% coarse perlite to ensure drainage. Fruit tree seedlings at this stage are extremely sensitive to waterlogged roots. Make a hole about 3 centimeters deep in the center of the pot, place the pit or seed with the root tip pointing downward, and cover it gently with the soil mix. Water it gently and thoroughly until water drains from the bottom. Place the pot in a warm spot, a windowsill with morning sun, or outdoors in a sheltered position with bright, indirect light. The seedling does not want full, harsh sun at this stage. It wants warmth and bright, indirect light until it has pushed its first 4 to 6 true leaves. Germination from planting to first shoot emergence typically takes 1 to 3 weeks for a properly stratified seed. If you're seeing nothing after 4 weeks, the seed may not have received adequate stratification. Mark that in your notes and adjust the timing next season. Once the seedling has 4 to 6 leaves and is visibly growing, begin introducing it to more direct morning sun over a period of 2 weeks. At this point, apply a very dilute, balanced liquid fertilizer, half the recommended rate on the package stock, once every 2 weeks to support the young root system without burning it. By the end of the first growing season, a well-managed stone fruit seedling from a peach, plum, cherry, apricot, or almond pit can reach 60 to 90 centimeters in height and be ready for its permanent planting position. I want to stop here and ask you something because I'm genuinely curious about what's growing in your space. Drop a comment right now and tell me, which fruit pit are you going to try this with first? Is it a peach, a plum, a cherry, an apricot, or an almond? Just drop the name of the fruit in the comments below. I read every single comment on this channel, and I want to know which tree you're going to start growing from today. Tell me right now. Now here is your golden tip, and this is something that I genuinely have never seen mentioned in any guide I've read on growing stone fruit from seed, and it makes a significant difference to both germination rate and the long-term health of the tree you grow. When you are selecting which pits to keep for growing, do not randomly grab any pit from any piece of fruit. Be deliberate. Choose the largest, most perfectly formed fruit from the healthiest tree you can access. The reason for this is simple but important. The embryo inside a pit from a large, healthy, well-nourished fruit has larger carbohydrate reserves than the embryo inside a small, stressed, or damaged fruit. Those carbohydrate reserves are what the seedling runs on from the moment germination begins until it pushes its first leaves above the soil and can start photosynthesizing on its own. A seedling with larger reserves germinates faster, pushes a stronger first root system, and establishes more vigorously than one that starts with limited reserves. In practical terms, this means if you're eating peaches from a tree that produces exceptionally well, keep those pits. If you're eating fruit from a tree that's struggling or fruit that was harvested early or stored for a long time, those pits will give you weaker seedlings. The best pits come from fully ripe fruit, eaten fresh, from a productive, healthy tree. One more thing on this, always keep 3 to 5 pits for every tree you want to grow. because even with perfect technique, not every seed will germinate. Having multiple pits in stratification at the same time gives you insurance, and if they all germinate, you can select the strongest seedling and give the others to a fellow grower. Before I close, let me quickly go through the most common mistakes I see in pit propagation, because even people who understand the process can undermine their results with these errors. The first mistake is skipping stratification entirely or cutting it short. I've had people message me saying their peach pit didn't germinate after 2 weeks in a pot of soil. 2 weeks. A peach pit needs 90 to 120 days of cold stratification before it will even consider germinating. There are no shortcuts here. The biology requires what it requires. The second mistake is using wet, waterlogged medium during stratification. Moist is the word. Damp. If your stratification medium is wet enough to drip, it's too wet, and you will rot your seeds before they ever have a chance to sprout. Squeeze the medium in your hand first. If water drips out, add more dry material and mix it through. The third mistake is planting the germinated seed with the root tip pointing upward. This sounds obvious, but I've seen it happen. The root tip always goes down. The shoot emergence, which happens from the opposite end of the seed, goes up. Fourth mistake, and this one kills more seedlings than almost anything else, is overwatering the young seedling after it emerges. A seedling at this stage needs consistent moisture but excellent drainage. If the soil stays soggy for more than a day or two, the roots will rot, the seedling will collapse, and it will look like it just gave up. It didn't give up, it drowned. Water when the top layer of soil is dry to the touch, not on a fixed schedule. And the fifth mistake is planting the seedling outside too early without hardening it off. A seedling grown indoors or in a sheltered position is not ready for full outdoor exposure. Transition it gradually, a few hours of morning sun per day for a week, then half a day, then full outdoor placement. Rush that transition and you'll see the leaves scorch and the seedling go into shock at exactly the moment it should be putting its energy into root development. Think about what I've just shared with you. The next time you eat a peach on a warm summer afternoon, or finish a bowl of cherries, or crack open an apricot, you are holding in your hand the beginning of a tree. A tree that could be producing fruit in 3 to 4 years. A tree that could still be feeding your family in 30 years. All it needs from you is the right preparation, the right environment, and the patience to let biology do what it was designed to do. You don't need a nursery. You don't need expensive equipment. You don't need anything except the fruit you were already going to eat and 3 steps that are now completely clear to you. That's it. The barrier to growing your own peach, plum, cherry, apricot, or almond tree from scratch is lower than almost any other thing you could decide to grow, and the reward is something you'll still be enjoying decades from now. If this video gave you something real, if you're going to go save a pit today that you would have thrown away yesterday, then do me a favor and subscribe to this channel. I post practical field-tested content every single week for growers who are serious about their trees. Not theory, not recycled advice, real experience from real orchards. Click subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll never miss a video that could change something about how you grow. Next week, I'm going into something that builds directly on what we covered today. How to speed up the time from seedling to first fruit on peach, plum, and cherry trees, including the grafting technique that commercial nurseries use to get trees fruiting years earlier than a seed-grown tree would on its own. If you're growing from pits and you want fruit as fast as possible, that video is going to be exactly what you need. I'll see you there.